Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum. A very, very warm welcome to all of you to this panel discussion. It is such a pleasure to have the distinguished panelists and all distinguished guests here. And it is always even more of a pleasure to discuss something that has to do with education and higher education, of course. My name is Faisal Bari. I'm currently the Dean for the School of Education at LUMS. And this pleasure is also doubled by the fact there are a lot of people from Oxford here, a place that I was at more than 30 years ago as well. So always pleasure to see that. So on behalf of the Oxford Pakistan program, who's co-hosting this, and Lahore University of Management Sciences, a very warm welcome to you all. We will, at the very beginning, let me just mention, so we'll have opening remarks from the Vice Chancellor of LUMS, Arshad Ahmed Saab, and then we will have OPP co-founder, Dr. Talha, who will speak about the Oxford Pakistan program, and then we'll have the panel discussion on higher education. We will have plenty of time for question and answers at the end, almost half an hour or more. And around maybe a few minutes after 12, we'll be closing the program. So without further ado, let me now invite Dr. Arshad Ahmed, the Vice Chancellor of Lahore University of Management Sciences, for his opening remarks. Arshad.
Thank you, Faisal. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Greetings, good morning, and welcome to everybody. We're really delighted to have Oxford Pakistan program at LUMS to discuss building higher education institutions for the 21st century. I want to begin, of course, by thanking our panelists, starting with our founding Pro-Chancellor, Syed Babar Ali Saab, Principal Brown. Babar Saab was the first to arrive, punctual as always, and we thank you for being here, Babar Saab. Principal Brown, welcome. Professor Blyth, welcome. Professor Bari, welcome. Professor Malik, and of course, the world's youngest Nobel Laureate Malala Yousafzai, welcome. Malala, you'll recall last time we met, it was virtual, but I do want to thank you again for your very inspirational commencement speech during our convocation in 2020, and you'll be very happy to know that during the lockdown in June, that commencement was internationally recognized with the Circle of Excellence Award. So thank you very much. I often ponder on a quote from a futurist, H.G. Wells, who said in 1920 that human history has become more and more a race between education and catastrophe. In this race, the world currently faces a range of crises that increasingly manifest themselves in catastrophic ways: grand challenges in health, scarcity, war, inequity, and climate change. All of these persist. And historically, these crises have been associated mostly with the global south. But such threats to civilization cannot be viewed in isolation. I think in this race, we must all elevate our roles. And what if we embraced our central mission as global educators who always put learning first? What if we expanded our perspective on learning? Could exceptional learning make the crucial difference to our planet and in our way of life? Now, for example, the pandemic forced us to put learning first. And as we saw, some countries learned better than others. Here at the university at LUMS, we also champion a perspective called learning without borders. We have come to believe that learning without borders offers a paradigm shift in how we can think about learning. Learning without borders can catalyze the types of frame-breaking innovations that the wider global community mostly needs. It invites leaders worldwide to explore how they too might accelerate exceptional higher-level learning. And as educators, in our roles as students, teachers, managers, philanthropists, societal leaders, transforming challenges into opportunities requires breaking boundaries that limit our thinking and restrict what is possible. So learning without borders offers a way forward to transcend geographic, socioeconomic, sectorial, gender-based, and disciplinary boundaries. This perspective allows us to think differently about how we structure the underlying systems that support exceptional higher-level learning. And to design these systems, we must unequivocally place learning first in our governance, in our leadership, and in our decision-making. So today, as the panel explores how to create positive change to build higher education institutions in the 21st century, I'd like to briefly talk about 3 levers of learning. The key in all of these 3 levers are local solutions that turn obstacles into opportunities. So the first lever is access. Let me share 2 examples. To advance our efforts towards equity for women, we initiated the Women's Scholarship Program, which offers a 50% tuition waiver to all women accepted across 7 graduate programs in our business school. The international accreditation body AACSB recognized LUMS for becoming the first university in the world to create such a transformative social impact by advancing women's access to management education. And after just 2 years, the ratio of women in all business school programs has quadrupled from 9% to more than 36%. Another noteworthy example is our flagship National Outreach Program, or NOP, that began 21 years ago. Each year, thousands of talented students apply to LUMS from over 140 districts, towns, villages across Pakistan. NOP students represent a 1/10 of our intake, with students coming from family incomes of just $200 a month, where higher education would be inconceivable. Recently, the Council for the Advancement and Support of Education recognized the NOP as a model for organizations and universities worldwide. They awarded us with a Global Platinum Award for best practices in diversity, equity, and inclusion. Now, we have seen the ripple effect that comes from investing in our highly talented yet underserved youth population. NOP students go on to top universities and companies. They start up their social enterprises in their own districts and villages. They participate in Pakistan's civil service, which many describe as wheels on which the entire engine of the state has to move. And this year, more than 17,000 applicants wrote the National Civil Superior Service exams, facing a minuscule 2% pass rate. The top 3 successful candidates were from LUMS, with first place awarded to an NOP scholar. Now, the second lever of learning, of putting learning first, is relevance. Soon we will be co-locating 6 centers of excellence in a new state-of-the-art central building complex designed to encourage collaborative projects with industry. The 6 centers will focus on entrepreneurship, on energy, on water, gender, policy, and technology. Here is an example of one center's short-term impact. 4 years ago, the LUMS Energy Institute was seeded with 30 million rupees, which is about $250,000. And since then, it has raised 11 times that amount in grants and created the biggest power sector database in the country. The Institute has also designed Pakistan's national policy on electric vehicles. It has jump-started 6 spin-off companies with significant equity and produced prototype affordable electric rickshaws using swappable battery technology. So if you like that, you'll like the punchline here, which is that we had a presentation recently to the LUMS Board of Trustees just this week, and the director shared the Institute's recommendations, which has saved Pakistan to date over 250 billion US dollars. If the Institute's current recommendations are implemented, the estimate is another 750 billion that can be saved in the next 5 years. And this, according to the director, is a conservative estimate. So what we are saying here is that each center will open new doors of possibility for positive change. Finally, the third lever is collaboration. There are enormous opportunities in Pakistan for an infinite variety of effective local, regional, and global collaborations. Effective collaborations amplify positive change, especially when they are driven by exceptional learning. Recently, 150 of our students twinned with 150 students from the University of Baltistan in Skardu. Focusing on major challenges that have both local and global significance, faculty from the 2 universities co-designed and co-taught 5 immersive, experiential, field-based courses. These courses on water, energy, life sciences, entrepreneurship, and e-commerce took place in natural learning environments in the majestic setting of our northern areas. Often described as the third pole, over 1 billion people rely on rivers that flow from this mountainous area. And after living together for a month in Skardu, beyond the courses, you can imagine how learning flourished through friendships and a deep appreciation of local languages, culture, and resilience that defines our Balti counterparts. So in conclusion, the levers of access, relevance, and collaboration have something in common. All of these are anchored in or on values, since learning itself is guided by values. Merit and high standards define us. Honesty and integrity are foundational. And diversity, equity, and inclusion strengthen us as a community. So I think effective 21st century organizations are those who will ensure that our successors will become better than us and will, inshallah, take access, relevance, and collaboration to new levels. And we also believe that we can win this race of education by making exceptional learning our guidepost. And with that, there's so much more to learn from you. Thank you so much again for being with us. We look forward to your panel. Thank you very much.
I just want to also recognize and welcome Malala's parents. Thank you very much for being here. And on the scholarships for women, so School of Education applicants and incoming class is about 75% women. And recently one of our colleagues was saying maybe we should start a scholarship program for men. Haven't done that yet, but my pleasure now to introduce Dr. Talha Jamal Pirzada, co-founder for Oxford Pakistan program. He's a scientist in material science and works at the University of Oxford, and also to recognize Mr. Haroon Zaman, who is a corporate lawyer in London and is also the co-founder of the Oxford program, Pakistan program. And request Dr. Talha to please come to the stage.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Talha Jamal Pirzada, and on the behalf of the Oxford Pakistan program, I would like to welcome all of you to this panel discussion on building higher education institutions in the 21st century, held here in collaboration with the Lahore University of Management Sciences. Before I introduce my distinguished speakers, I would like to draw your attention on the issue at hand. Pakistan has produced some excellent minds in the field of science and technology. Not too long ago, Pakistani scientists like Riazuddin Siddiqui were grappling with problems such as general relativity and quantum computing. Names like Ishfaq Ahmed were collaborating with institutions like CERN. Dr. Salimuzzaman Siddiqui were making breakthroughs in the field of organic chemistry. Scientists like Abdus Salam were not only laying the foundations of global centers of particle physics, they were leading the fight in making science more accessible for the developing world. Today, when I look around at the top scientific institutions across the world, it hurts me to find that there is no dominating Pakistani name contributing in a way that was prevalent only a few decades ago. The School of Science and Engineering at LUMS, where individuals like Dr. Sabi Anwar Sahab are working on this issue tirelessly, but still some key ingredients are missing. It's not that Pakistan's not producing excellent students. We have the capability and the potential. This panel discussion organized by the OPP here to discuss how we can learn from the experiences of the West and carve out our own destiny. Being a scientist, I dream of a day when the list of the top global scientists, engineers, and technologists is once again filled with Pakistanis. I hope through this event, everyone gathered in this room and beyond can join forces and reinvigorate this interest and help us address this problem. Through this discussion today, and through the other events lined up by the OPP today, we aim to create opportunities which could provide meaningful support for researchers in order for them to achieve new heights. One of the core aims of the OPP is to increase Pakistani representation at Oxford, but also to bring Oxford to Pakistan. And this discussion is a humble effort to do just that. We're privileged to have with us here Professor Stephen Blyth, who was the CEO of the Harvard Endowment Company and now the principal of Lady Margaret Hall, Oxford. Dr. Nick Brown, Dr. Nick Brown, principal of Linacre College, one of the constituent colleges of Oxford. We have with us Ms. Malala Yousafzai, who needs no introduction. On the invitation of the Oxford Pakistan program, she's been traveling specially from the UK to attend the series of events we have hosted today. We have the absolute pleasure to benefit from the presence of Syed Babar Ali OBE, who's an educationist, an institution builder, founder of LUMS, and a guiding star for the OPP. We also have Dr. Faisal Bari, the Dean of LUMS School of Education, whose insights into the higher education sector will help steer this discussion. I would now like to hand it over to Professor Adeel Malik, who's an associate professor of political economy at Oxford and the academic lead for the OPP. Professor Adeel Malik, please.
Thank you very much. It's a great pleasure to be back at LUMS and hosting this great event. As Talha mentioned, it's one of the key objectives of Oxford Pakistan program to promote such academic collaboration. Let me first check our time now. It's 10:33, so we'll have about 1 hour of panel discussion, and we'll try and keep it very focused. I might cut off some of the speakers just to make sure that we're on time, and then there'll be 30 minutes for Q&A session. So may I request our distinguished panelists, and let me invite first Ms. Malala Yousafzai to come on the stage. Malala has been an excellent support for OPP, and she's kindly agreed to join us today for this session, and she came especially to attend it. Professor Stephen Blyth, the principal of Lady Margaret Hall College, please come to the stage. Dr. Nick Brown, principal of Linacre College. Professor Faisal Bari, the Dean of School of Education at LUMS. Great, so this is really a great moment for us because we have on the panel a variety of perspectives. We have a leading visionary of education with us, who is often described as the Syed Ahmad Khan of Lahore, with his decades of experience and also his humility. I asked him at what time would he like to speak, and he said, give time to the other panelists. I would like to listen first. And of course, we have Malala with her huge experience in expanding education for females, her support for a dedicated scholarship for Pakistani women at Oxford. Of course, Stephen Blyth has decades of experience at Harvard, both as professor of statistics, but also managing the largest endowment in the world, which is based at Harvard University. So we are going to ask him some interesting questions about financial sustainability, which is a key issue for most universities, including LUMS. And Dr. Nick Brown is, again, a hugely influential figure within the University of Oxford. He's dedicated decades of work at Oxford, building estates, building new institutions. Oxford is a hugely decentralized university, so we would like to learn a lot more from him today, how Oxford is run, how Oxford promotes access, how Oxford deals with the sorts of challenges that institutions of higher education face. And of course, Faisal is a commentator in Dawn, is a public intellectual as well, an academic in his own right, so he has an excellent grasp of problems of higher education. So let's get started. And I think a good way to start is where the eminent vice chancellors talked about access, which is a big issue in most universities, particularly in private educational institutions. You want to get the best talent, but in that process, there is an inbuilt bias towards candidates, people from particular backgrounds, with particular income, socioeconomic backgrounds. Let me start with Malala and her experience with thinking about particularly primary education and the role of women and how that could become a ladder for them to actually lead on to higher education.
First of all, I would like to thank everyone for such a warm welcome. I would like to thank Syed Babar Ali Saab for your support for Oxford Pakistan program from the start, when it was just an idea in our heads. So my dear friends, Haroon, Minahil, Talha, they started working on this a very long time ago, and it was with the support of incredible people who you all see here and who are not here, that it was possible for them to make it happen. And it's sometimes I have to really pinch myself that this is actually happening. We are really proud of the work that's been done so far, and I'm really excited to be in the company of such amazing professors and academics. I have been advocating for girls' education for the past 15 years, and access to education is a big challenge for girls from many backgrounds in many parts of the world, including Pakistan. only around 13% of girls make it to grade 9. 12 million girls in Pakistan do not have access to education. We believe that girls should be able to complete their education so they are prepared to go to universities or choose any career path for themselves. So complete and quality education in schools is compulsory, is necessary for any girl, for any child to be able to make future decisions for themselves, to make career decisions for themselves. But at the same time, Pakistan is also making progress as well in the field of education, and it's thanks to the work of activists, civil society, and educationists that we are seeing more enrollment of children and girls into schools, and we are hoping that with more dedication and determination, we would be able to see that day in our lifetime soon when in Pakistan, every child would have access to school. It is a basic human right to be able to learn, write, read, and a lot of you would have heard my story already, how girls' education was banned in Swat Valley from around 2009 because of the extremism which happened there for 2 years. Things are much better now, and we are really grateful that we are living in peace, but we do not take our education for granted anymore. We remember the time when we could not go to schools. And unfortunately, it is still like a sad reality for many children around the world, and I want to make sure that I play my role in changing that. For me, I still remember the time when I could not even imagine a future without education. And sometimes, when I'm ever in doubt about the importance of education, I meet girls, especially girl students, and when I talk to them, I realize that they understand its importance more than any one of us. They know that their future relies on quality education. And yes. Yeah.
So, if I could just push you a little further on this. It's also a problem of aspirations, right? And how could one think about developing aspirations at the school age for higher education, and especially for girls?
Girls need women role models. Girls look to other girls and women around them. They're looking for role models who have taken a leading job in a field where they often do not see that many women. And when we see that there are women who have done an incredible job, they have become CEOs, they have become scientists, innovators, inventors, that is something that gives us hope that we can be in their place as well. So for girls, the biggest aspiration can be seeing other women doing amazing and exciting work. And for that, again, education becomes important. And girls also connect with stories of other women, and through storytelling, we can tell them how they can also overcome the challenges that they're facing and make a place for themselves.
Thank you. Stephen, I'm going to pester you today by requesting you to wear two hats, the Oxford and the Harvard hat. So how has Harvard, obviously, at the Lady Margaret Hall, access, inclusion are central. So I would like you to talk a little bit about that, but also bring in your Harvard experience about access, diversity, inclusion. It's been a central concern at Harvard because it's an elite university. Not everyone can get in. And those who do get in obviously come from particular backgrounds or have had particular trainings. How would you look at access from your own experience?
Okay, well, thank you. I just want to say on behalf of Oxford University and the Oxford Pakistan program, Dr. Brown and I are honored to be here. We want to thank Syed Babar Ali OBE and all our hosts, the Vice Chancellor, and all our hosts here at LUMS. It is a deep honor for us to be here. It's also a great pleasure to be back in Lahore. My first time at LUMS, my second time in Lahore, and it's been an absolute pleasure. And we're honored to be part of this panel. To speak to LMH, I should just say I'm deeply proud to be the head of Lady Margaret Hall for, well, a number of reasons, but two key reasons. First is that Lady Margaret Hall has been a leader since its inception in reducing barriers to the previously excluded in higher education. It took Oxford 782 years to admit women. We do not have a great history over our 1,000-year history. And Lady Margaret Hall was founded, the first college founded at Oxford to admit women in 1878. And we have had many distinguished alumni, and I'm deeply proud that, of course, Malala is one of our alumni, as is Benazir Bhutto. And so we have deep Pakistan connections at LMH, of which I'm proud. But there's a broader issue, obviously access to women, but access takes many, many dimensions. We'll probably speak later about financial access, but there's also access to the previously underrepresented or non-traditional backgrounds. And of course, non-traditional, underrepresented means different things in different circumstances. At Oxford, there's been a long tradition of pupils coming to Oxford from a collection of schools who frequently send students. So there is a network of understanding of the code to get into Oxford and Cambridge and other higher educational institutions. So Oxford and LMH in particular have done a lot of work really to demystify and to reduce barriers, aspirational barriers, social barriers, cultural barriers, and say, we want the most talented scholars regardless of background. We want to be bringing together diverse perspective, diverse views for actually the good of the institution as well as for the students. And this speaks to something that I was very proud to be part of at Harvard. There are many things not perfect about Harvard. Obviously, no institution gets everything right. But one of the things that Harvard really has led on, and I think to speak to eminent institutions of higher education like LUMS, like Oxford, like Harvard, do have a responsibility to be global leaders because we can have disproportionate impact on educational institutions beyond our boundaries. And the one area that Harvard led in was simply this: if you're talented enough to get into Harvard, we'll pay. If you have the money, you pay. But if you don't have the money, we'll pay. Now, that is an incredibly empowering statement. Harvard said that, and they said that to every student from around the world. If you're good enough to get in, we'll pay. So it's the elimination of the financial barrier. And how is that achieved? Well, Harvard has extremely high fees. You all know how expensive it is to go to university in the US, $70,000 a year. However, of the Harvard operating budget of $4 billion a year, as the annual operating budget, it's a little higher probably now since I've left, less than 5% comes from undergraduate tuition fees. A huge amount is funded by philanthropic investment in education. And to speak to the endowment, I was very honored to work at the endowment as an investor for 10 years. It's $50 billion now. It's an extraordinary sum, which has come from the generosity largely of alumni, but also of foundations and supporters who believe in the future of education, investing in the future of students. And I think this goes hand in hand with this access question. So you may know, that we have approximately 40 to 50 Pakistani graduate students accepted to Oxford each year. Only 15 to 20 can come because of financial reasons. Here is a huge financial barrier to access. And we'll speak more perhaps about finance, I'll come back to that. But the idea of where is the most valuable investment of resources from the private sector, from the public sector, from individuals, from philanthropists. Where would you like to invest your resources? And in my mind, you want to invest in the education of our young people in all our countries. We want to equip them. We want to equip them, enable them, empower them with the skills and experiences to tackle the global challenges we're facing. And I'm just inspired to be surrounded by students at LMH, and hopefully some future students at LMH, some current students at LMH are here, and some past students. So I will think that there is so much we can do, and I think to say our educational institutions, yours, Oxford, and in the US, need to lead.
Thank you. Excellent, thank you. Nick, you have seen Oxford for a very long time, and a lot of these discussions about access have been happening in Oxford for decades. You've seen new programs being rolled out. I'm sure that a lot of students and administrators in this university would like to know how the debate on access has evolved. And please.
So I think at its heart, the debate on access in Oxford has two principal pillars. First is one of social justice. It is right that everybody should have access to quality education. That should be a basic human right. But there's also a second and very important pillar of the principle of access at the world's leading universities, which is access to talent. And one of the reasons why Stephen and I have taken a week out to come to Pakistan this week is not to hold out a hand of charity, but to hold out an invitation to Pakistan, and particularly to Pakistan's outstanding academic institutions, to come and join the global party, because we need your voices to be heard. The world is missing out at the moment on a very significant proportion of the amazing brains that could be contributing to solving global problems. Were we to track back 60 years to the foundation of Linacre College, one of the big barriers to participation in the University of Oxford was, even for British people, was the financial cost of belonging. And rather like Stephen's College, which was set up to enable women to participate in greater numbers, my college was set up to allow greater numbers of students from poorer backgrounds, and particularly international students, to come and participate in postgraduate education. It's a sad fact that 20 years ago, 50% of our students in Oxford were drawn from the top 10% of the UK population. Now, if you think about that strategically, that just doesn't make sense. We're missing on 90% of the talent in the country if we don't have means of that 90% accessing our education. And today, we still have the same situation, that whilst we have grappled with access at an undergraduate level successfully, we still have a significant problem at postgraduate level, that there isn't the funding there to make sure that we can access all of the talent. Now, simply looking at the British situation, as everybody here in this audience will know, there is a substantial Pakistani diaspora in the UK. Amongst the UK population, students from Pakistani cultural or ethnic backgrounds are the least well represented at UK universities at postgraduate level, and the least well represented at Oxford University. Now, that's something that Oxford University needs to do something about, and I'm hugely grateful and very, very proud that it's our Pakistani academics who have taken this problem by the scruff of the neck and have created this Oxford Pakistan project to try and solve that particular problem.
Great, thank you. If I could press you a little further on some of the concrete initiatives that Oxford has taken in recent years to bring in Black ethnic minority communities, the Academic Futures Project, because I think it would be very useful for our participants here to learn a little bit about those initiatives.
Yeah, thank you. So I imagine that a similar debate will be common in Pakistan as was the case in the UK a few years ago, which is the government pushing the university to try to be more inclusive and attacking the university, a university like Oxford, universities like Cambridge, for being socially elite. And that was true, we were socially elite. As I said, 50% of our students drawn from 10%, the upper 10% of the population. But the reason for that was not because we were picking only those students who came from posh backgrounds or who came from elite schools. It was because we were picking students who had the most glittering CVs, who had achieved the most in their first few years. Now, inevitably, there is a very strong correlation there with social advantage and the opportunities offered to youngsters. Unless we put those opportunities in the path of every youngster, then you're never going to have equality of access to the university. And what Oxford and Cambridge have discovered, as I'm sure other elite universities like LUMS have discovered, is that even if you offer those opportunities, there are many students with the talent to come to the university who have neither the CV nor the aspiration to come and join a university like this. And so we need to do something active to overcome that barrier as well, the aspiration and the lack of educational advantage that will catapult you into a career like this. So the University of Oxford has a number of programs, both at undergraduate and postgraduate level. One is called Unique Plus. We take students who come from disadvantaged educational backgrounds and who would not be considering normally the opportunity of a postgraduate course at Oxford, and we bring them in the summer vacation of their second year as an undergraduate to have a research internship with one of our research groups across the university, and they can do that in any subject. We piloted it with the sciences, we're now broadening it to social sciences and the humanities. And they come and they join a research group and they see through that experience who the people are at Oxford University, and they realise that the professors at Oxford University are not intimidating characters who are socially elite and who will look down on you if you don't know how to hold a fish fork. What they are is people like Talha and Adeel, normal human beings from normal backgrounds, but who have inspirational ideas and extraordinarily clever brains. And they see the excitement of belonging to that sort of institution. And that is one of the motivations then for them to apply for a place at Oxford. And that's been extraordinarily successful. We now take on over the summer around about 300 or so interns on our Unique Plus program. We take a lot of time to make sure that we're selecting those with both the potential and those who have suffered disadvantage. And from those 300, last year, we found over 3/4 of them were then inspired to apply for postgraduate study, and more than half of them were inspired to apply for postgraduate study at Oxford or Cambridge.
Absolutely.
We also have a program now of providing targeted scholarships for postgraduate study. This is important because in a university in the West, very often you will find that PhDs and masters are well funded in certain subject areas. In the UK, it's particularly medicine and STEM subjects, and poorly funded in social sciences and humanities. Over 90% of our students in the medical science faculty in Oxford have a scholarship. In the humanities faculty, it's 17%. Now you can see there immediately that there is a big access issue. And so what we've created is a series of targeted scholarships targeted at those communities which are underrepresented in underrepresented areas of the university.
Great. Okay. I think this is all very useful information. I think I'll invite people to also look at Oxford University websites. I'm not doing promotion, but to really provide people a sense of a dynamic landscape. Over the last 20 years that I've been at Oxford, I've realized that there are a lot of people who want to access Oxford, but Oxford is equally keen to reach out. And so their initiatives have evolved year after year, and there are excellent web pages that provide that landscape. I'm going to quickly turn towards Faisal Bari, who is extremely knowledgeable about the Pakistani scene, both from the standpoint of LUMS, but also public sector universities. What are the core issues of access, if you could briefly elaborate on those?
In some ways, the scene is set by the fact that what happened at the school level in Pakistan in the last few decades is now really happening at the university level, where universities are, the demand is exploding, the university numbers are going very high, both in the private sector and public sector. And so the idea is that access, in terms of numbers at least, would go up to a certain extent, but key questions of quality have now become very important. So that's one dimension of it. But keep in mind that of the 100 students who join grade 1, only about 6 reach university level, and 94 of them drop out at various stages, usually big dropouts, especially for girls after primary, and then over the next few grades, etc., because the school pyramid is also very narrow at the middle and high school level, both for girls and boys, but especially for girls. And then coming to university, Pakistan has a population of 220 odd million, and we only have 220 odd universities, right? So it's still a very, very small number of people who are reaching that university. And among those 220, the competition for spaces is just astoundingly keen. I mean, one mark at metric or FSC level can decide your future about whether you can get into a medical school or not, or engineering school or not. One mark in the admission test does the same thing as well. And this is all separate from the financial aspect which we're talking about. So there is that dimension of, how many spaces do we have? We have a few thousand spaces in medical, a few thousand in engineering, and if you add all the others. And then the quality dimension is very clear. So you have universities both in the public and private sector that are very good. We hope, like we're sitting in one, but there are many others, both in public and private. But then there's a very large tail of universities that provide fairly poor quality education, and all of our metrics of quality show that. Now, so the key challenge in some ways is, yes, we want to improve access in numbers, access for anybody who's in any way disadvantaged, so that we even out the playing field, but also then access in terms of good quality, because I don't think access and quality are separate in that sense, right? So access in terms of good quality, because unless the quality is good, the returns to education, in whatever way you think about them, whether it's economic, narrow, or broad, they become very, very troublesome, and they come down very, very quickly, right? Just to give an example, even the most, so let's say, the entry-level job that we have even in our university, now most candidates applying for them happen to be masters. That's like 18 years of education for entry-level jobs, etc., right? And the reason is that the quality is so poor that the mismatch between jobs and what people are coming with, that becomes too high. And so to me, access definitely is one big issue, but it is very, very tied to quality issue. And that should be the prime target for Pakistan as they think about higher education for the next couple of decades.
Yeah, that's a very relevant point, because it's actually also relevant for the Middle East, for Latin America. Returns to education are really linked beyond tertiary level, right? So higher education. Excellent. I'm going to bring in Syed Babar Ali Saab and his own personal reflection on the National Outreach Program. It's been incredibly successful, and I know you are really committed to it. Please tell us a little bit more about your original vision for the program and how it evolved.
Thank you. Well, it's truly a privilege to be sitting here amongst the academics. I'm the most unacademic person here on this panel, and really a privilege to sit next to Malala. We first had an opportunity to be on the platform together at Oxford about 4 years ago. So it's wonderful to be together with you, Malala. Let me add a few other things which I've heard earlier on. We are a very poor, distant cousin of Harvard, but we have maintained the same attitude towards admissions. Any student who is able to get into LUMS, whether he or she if he doesn't have the resources, we provide the resources. So nobody's been denied education at LUMS who got in and didn't have the resources. So that, and the credit goes to the people who have provided us resources for scholarship funds. On the National Outreach Program, this was initiated about over 20 years ago, and it was really suggested by Dr. Zahur Hassan, who was then the Vice Chancellor. I hope he's sitting somewhere in the audience. He initiated this thing, and we started. He said LUMS is too much of an elitist organization. We've got to have an opportunity to give possibilities of bringing in people who are not from the elitist level. So we started this on a modest scale with a few, less than 10 in the first few years. And now I'm glad to say that it's come up to about 100 a year that are admitted. And these 100, we spent about a couple of years on grooming, on identifying individuals who can make it to the NOP program. We are in touch with all the leading public schools of the country. And we start with a group of about 7,000 students who we think, I mean, not we, but the school teachers in those government schools identify as their bright students. So we work with them. We said, prepare them to enter our stream here and prepare them with basic English, maths, and other subjects. And of the 7,000 every year, about 500 are brought onto the campus for 3 weeks of intensive kind of a boot camp training, and to show them the campus and tell them that every student has an opportunity to come here provided you work hard and take the entrance examination. So once once they take the examination, there is no they have to compete on par with people who are paying full fees against the ones that are from this background. So there is no special concession made to the students who are coming from a disadvantaged background. They have to compete, and they have to come in entirely on merit. But once they get in, we make sure that they have all the resources to complete their program, not only the fees, the hostel expenses, their food, their travel to their homes, clothing, everything else. They get about 130% of the normal cost of being educated here. And the other big challenge is that once they are admitted, we want to make sure that they get adjusted to the local environment in a manner that don't feel complex. And luckily, because the program has been going for a number of years, there are a large number of senior NOP students who mentor the newcomers. But now we've started another program of requesting some of the retirees, people who are coming from the business community, from the civil service, from other people who are available in Lahore, to adopt some of the NOPs who are coming in for mentoring. And we find that such an opportunity that is given not only to the NOP students, but to the people who are sitting at home and doing nothing and retired. They feel that they are contributing towards the development of the next nation. So that again is a very positive kind of initiative that has recently been taken in the last few years, and I want to thank people who give time and who mentor these young men and women to make them come into the mainstream so that they don't feel any complex on that issue. So, but once they graduate from here, they are as good as anybody else. Just to give you an example, a couple of months ago, I got an email from a fellow, I didn't even know him. He said, my name is Muhammad Bashir. I come from a village next to, in Sargodha district. My father had a few camels. And when I was 5 years old, he was murdered. And my mother took a job in the village, serving other people at 300 rupees a month. She spent much of that money on educating me. My teachers took interest. I got onto the NOP. And I did well. I got a scholarship to go to Manchester University. I did a master's in economics and mathematics. And now I have a pre-doc scholarship from Columbia for 2 years at $5,000 a month. So, I mean, that is the kind of, and he came to see me, and he was such a modest individual, and I was so happy to have met him. I want to also take this opportunity. There are a number of people sitting here who have been helping us, and there are others who can help us. They want to have a building showing their name, but I think the best investment they can make is to contribute to the scholarship fund. Because I feel that this is the best investment that anybody can make, is to put a young girl or a young boy through LUMS, and so that they can go and conquer the world. And we feel that the NOPs here that come to us, and they are second to none. I was asking for some statistics of the number of dropouts once they come into the mainstream, and it is no more than the dropouts of the people who are coming on the fee paying. So, I mean, they are second to none, and we owe it to them and to the nation to provide them every opportunity to come forward. Thank you.
Thank you. And we are certainly very delighted at the Oxford Pakistan program to reach out to these individuals. Please do apply to Oxford University, particularly to our scholarship program. Talha and Haroon can help you, provide you more information. We're particularly keen to welcome them. I want to, Babar Sahab, just press you a little bit further about inclusion within LUMS. So you can get these very talented individuals who come to LUMS, but it could also reproduce social inequalities within LUMS. So how do you ensure their inclusion and absorption within LUMS, where students from very different income backgrounds are also studying?
Well, one area where there is an opportunity for bringing about some kind of an evenness is in the hostels. Half of our students, of the 6,000 students that we have on the campus, half of them live on the campus. There is, I would say that about 1,500 girls are living on the campus and 2,000 boys are living on the campus. So when you're in the hostel and you're sharing a room with somebody, there is no discrimination whether you come from family A or family C. So that is one. Then, of course, we've got over 50 societies here, where students are encouraged to socialize, to learn about music, about debating, about various subjects, whatever their interest in, drama, and of course our sports facilities are also very extensive here. We've got a gym, we've got cricket teams, tennis, and all the other sports are available to them. These are opportunities for them to rub shoulders with each other. Of course, our dining center, there is, the food is served to everybody, and they sit next to each other. There is no segregation at any part. So there is, every effort is being made, and especially in the classroom when they're sitting next to each other, there is, people feel. I've seen it in somebody who comes from a privileged background sitting next to somebody who's coming from a village, and he finds that the fellow from the village is more bright than him. So that is another evening kind of thing. One other factor which I forgot to mention, other than the undergraduate program, in the graduate program, especially in the School of Science and Engineering, we now have a very proactive program to admit students in the graduate program, the ones who could not get into the undergraduate program. And here we give fairly liberal scholarships for people who come from other universities. And we find that they come with uneven kind of qualification and background. And within a few, when we have a program to bring them on speed with the rest of the particular department that they are working in, and we find that within a few months they get the polish and they are able to take our master's examination, and some of them stay on for PhD. But many of the students, I would say, over 50% of the students who come into the master's program then are ready to go abroad and be admitted to the top universities of the world, and all of scholarship. So that is another effort of us to provide opportunity to people who have missed coming into the undergraduate program to come to the graduate program and sort of being to have an opportunity to go abroad to the top universities. And we keep track of these people, and we find that they do as well as anybody else. Thank you.
I mean, one key area of success for LUMS, obviously, is it's in global engagement. A lot of the global talent pool is getting diversified because a lot of young Pakistani scholars educated at LUMS and then having PhD degrees in the United States or UK, then staying on in European and American universities and adding to their diversity, and that's really a great contribution of LUMS. We've got about 25 minutes left, and I've got a large agenda to deal with. So I'm going to come selectively to as it pertains to any of you. A key issue for many universities are finances. There are some very rich universities who can afford to have endowments, but a lot of universities have to depend on fee. And what exactly is the appropriate balance? Do we need to cross-subsidize? How do universities build endowments? How do they make them financially sustainable? Is a very pressing question. And maybe a good starting point would be to ask Stephen to offer his reflections, because he's managed one of the world's largest endowment.
So, well, thank you. Financing higher education is a big challenge. I think it's a challenge for everybody. And one can learn from different examples. I think one thing to say up front is that having worked in the US and the UK, the distinction between private and public really doesn't have a major effect on the funding models. Harvard is a private institution but takes a lot of government funding. Oxford is a public institution but relies a lot on private funding. So if we think about the mix of funding, it looks very similar across all universities: undergraduate tuition, research income, commercial income. State funding might back up any of those elements, and then philanthropic support. That's really it. And if we think of those buckets, the one that has the most leverage is philanthropic support. And I think to Syed Babar Ali Saab's point about the best investment is to reduce financial barriers and equip a student to go on and change the world, become a citizen leader, is actually one of the most powerful arguments to sustain higher education, because that argument should sustain higher education both through private sector commercial funding and philanthropy, but also through persuading and influencing governments to increase their funding of higher education. It seems to be, when I was an undergraduate at Cambridge, our fees were paid by the UK government. That is no longer the case. I feel it's a shame in the UK that that is no longer the case. And if I could do one thing at Oxford, it would be make Oxford free for talented students for tuition fees. And I think that would be beneficial to the country and to the world. I realize that the US situation and Harvard is a unique situation, and there's a tradition of philanthropy in the US, but there's also a long tradition of philanthropy in the UK back to the Middle Ages, and there's a tradition of support demonstrated by the hall in which we sit here in Pakistan. And I would just encourage everybody with time and energy and resources. Resources come in many different ways. The power of persuasion, the power of advocacy, the power of articulation, as well as the power to commit resources to fund higher education. It seems to be the most pressing need. So if I think about sustainability, I do think it's about articulating the compelling impact, the transformative impact of bringing the most talented students together in one place to share ideas. A former colleague of mine at Harvard was one of the first scientists to identify warming oceans, and he was the principal of a Harvard undergraduate house, so my equivalent in Harvard. And he was often asked, being a climate scientist, are you optimistic for the future with climate change? And he said, I live with 400 students, they inspire me. I'm always optimistic, and that is what I feel. And I think whatever we can do to support the universities is, and I do think in the UK, I speak to the UK will be increasingly reliant on philanthropic support of its higher educational institutions. And what I do hope is that we can bring some of that philanthropic support and some of the philanthropic support from the UK Pakistani community and the Pakistan community to open up barriers and open doors for Pakistani students to come to Oxford. We actually will benefit. I just want to mention one thing on access before. All institutions, Harvard benefits from the diversity of its undergraduate body. No faculty member at Harvard would say anything other than the low-income financial aid program has benefited the richness of the academic discourse at Harvard, because we have people from inner city, South Central LA, we have people from Pakistan, we have people from Eastern Europe at Harvard, and that is enriching. So I just want to point on quality. I know it's a different point, but access increases quality. You'll hear people say, no, this is about, quotas. No, it's not. This is about increasing quality. 50% of the Harvard science faculty are women now. It's incredible. Of tenure track science. So and that was a 15-year initiative to get there. And we've got a much better science faculty now than we did 15 years ago.
Great.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'll give you a minute to think about also managing endowments. I'll come back to you. What, in your opinion, are some of the key lessons that you had in terms of managing endowments? But I hold that thought with you. Nick, how do you view this debate? And in particular, I would like you to talk a little bit about the fee versus endowment aspect.
Yeah, okay. And it's a really important point, because in a sense what we ought to be doing here is linking our discussion of the financial sustainability of universities with the more important discussion that we've been having this morning about access. And I think that they're fundamentally linked. And I think that many of the things that we've heard this morning about LUMS give us very good evidence for why that is the case. So in my book, I'm afraid I'm a bit of a zealot about this. I think a fundamental feature of a university must be its autonomy. Yeah? And without autonomy, I think universities are relegated to being the servants of whoever pays the bill.
Yeah. I was going to come to that point about administration, but it's fine. Yeah, please continue.
Okay, so I think one of the challenges for many universities in the UK is that the bill is largely paid by the government. And that inevitably means that their focus has to be on the economic and social purposes that the government wants that university to achieve, which is fine. That's an important purpose. But there are so many other things which universities should be contributing. The other side of the coin would be the private university, the for-profit university, that has to provide courses that are essentially glittering and attractive to students who can pay. If you run a restaurant, you can sell far more chips and donuts than you can sell healthy food. And I think universities mustn't go down the fast food route for degrees. Yeah. So what we have to do is to find a model where universities can maintain their autonomy and use that autonomy to speak truth to power and to prioritize the most talented.
Yeah, you really hit the nail on its head when it comes to Pakistan's higher educational landscape, but I'll come to that discussion about administration in a minute. When we think about financial sustainability, we do recognize the sort of differential demands within universities. If you have STEM subjects, they would require cross-subsidy, right? And I remember yesterday over dinner, you made a beautiful statement. You said, research is almost always a loss-making enterprise. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Well, it's not a hypothesis. It's absolutely true. In Oxford, we make a big loss on our research, and we subsidize it largely through government grants and through some of the income that we make through student fees. Research across the board is not always a loss-making enterprise, but it tends to be that in medical and in STEM subjects, they are particularly high cost. And it's very difficult, for example, to sustain a research endeavor in particle physics or in cancer biology on fees that you charge students alone or on the money that you get from governments. Yeah. So, in a sense, a value of the university is that it is able to not only cross-fertilize, but also to cross-subsidize. And I think that's one of the ways that we can make universities sustainable.
Great. Well, on this point, I want to bring in Malala through her experience at the Malala Fund, which has been making huge progress in terms of advancing access and making some of the programs sustainable, including the Oxford Pakistan program. She has a dedicated scholarship in her name, which brought in Binha Khan today from Karachi to study education at Oxford. So tell us how Malala Fund can contribute to this sort of financial sustainability.
So at Malala Fund, our focus is on preparing girls to be ready for future careers and their academic life as well. And our focus is mainly on secondary education. And we do advocacy at the global level, national level in 9 countries, including Pakistan, Nigeria, India. And we work with local activists who champion education for girls. They do research work, they advocate for policy change, and they also work in the most marginalized and difficult areas to raise more awareness about access to education. In the work that we are doing right now is, I think I'll just give one example because the advocacy work is so broad and it goes on forever that sometimes it's hard to explain it. But yesterday, I had the great opportunity to sit down with some schoolgirls from Pakistan, and they were in grade 8 to 10, and they raised some really important questions. They understood the issues that they were facing in access to education very clearly. They highlighted how they have challenges in reaching to school, including the issue of transportation and safety against harassments. They also talked about the difficulties that they face inside their schools. That includes the quality of education, the content and curriculum. It also includes the quality of teaching and how they need more teachers for the STEM subjects, and they need more resources. They need labs, they need more tools, computers, and they also mentioned engaging their parents, engaging their community about conversations that are focused on their careers and their future education. And one girl in there, and she stood up and she said that she has 5 siblings, and her dad is a driver, and he cannot actually afford their education. And she was worried that she would not be able to complete her education and actually go and follow her career dream. So we took all the concerns that were raised there. There were some stakeholders on the stage as well. There were education activists. There were parliamentarians as well. And the girls were speaking to them directly. I think it's really important to ensure that girls have a platform where they can speak truth to power. And that is one of the key elements of the advocacy work that I do, bringing girls' voices to those decision-making rooms. So I had the great opportunity then to meet the Chief Minister of Punjab, and we took all the concerns there. And I also requested that he meets the girls in person, and he already has made a commitment to completely banning corporal punishment in schools. He has also pledged a commitment to increase teacher enrollment. But it doesn't end there because these are commitments. And now our goal is to ensure that they actually act upon the commitment. So our teams will be in touch, and it could take months and years, but this is the power of advocacy. You have to keep it going. But it also connects to like the work that all of us here on the stage and in this room are doing. We make a commitment towards a change that we want to see, and we believe in that idea. We find people who are as passionate about those ideas as us, and they make a commitment to make it possible. It needs all kind of support. It needs expertise, financial support, and it needs advocacy and communication, and really just spreading the message as well. So this is something that we all would need when we talk about inclusivity and access for Pakistani students and other students all around the world who come from difficult backgrounds, who come from underserved communities. Oxford Pakistan program is one example of that. This is just the start of those initiatives, and some universities have already started many initiatives. Our goal is to make sure that we realize the potential, like it is working, it is successful, it is beneficial, it is putting us in a much better place than before. Let's expand it, let's invest in it more, and let's make sure that we have many more of these projects, and we allow like millions of more children, especially women and girls from underserved communities, to have the chance to have an academic career, follow their dreams, and have a future.
Yeah. I will quickly add that Malala is very humble. There are many other great initiatives that she's supported, including one that was initiated at this university by one of its visionary scientists, Dr. Sabi Anwar, who's present here in the room. He started the Lahore Science Mela, which brings together students from far-flung areas in the country and displays them, showcases the power and imagination linked with science. And that work, which is really foundational in building up aspirations, has been supported by Malala Fund as well. All right, moving on very swiftly to Stephen about management of endowments. Just a few words or, very quick reflections if you would like to.
Well, if I just briefly think about reflection. So Harvard distributed, we distributed from the Harvard Management Company about $1.5 billion a year to the university. This isn't the endowment, this is just the cash that we actually wired across to the university. About 40% of its operating budget at the time. So we distributed 4 to 5% of the endowment each year, which was essential to the operation of the university. It also gave the university autonomy, to Nick's point, an agency, financial agency. So from the investment problem, for those of you interested in going into the investment management, financial business, the investment problem is to generate 4 to 5% real return in perpetuity. That's quite hard, actually. It's we did actually manage it over the last 50 years and in excess, and basically through a long-term investment vision. And rather than go into the details of that, a very sophisticated investment portfolio, the driving force, and I just wanted to bring the driving force about working at the management company, is the fulfillment about working for a purpose. I hired investors. I used to work on Wall Street. I hired investors from across the globe who'd worked in the private sector, and they came to work at Harvard because they knew that their work was going directly to support the research and teaching mission of the university. It was an incredible atmosphere to be working with purpose. It's purely focused on investment management, the Harvard Management Company, but purely focused on supporting the teaching and research mission. And that actually was the main driver for success, in my view. Yes, we had some sophisticated investors. Yes, we did some innovative things. We bought a lot of forests and saw the trees grow and then sold them. It's a very innovative investment ideas. But the main idea was the purpose, and that actually tied in with the philanthropic side. We were able to talk to philanthropists, say, you endow a scholarship. We will undertake to fund a student a year in perpetuity. There is no better investment than that.
Great, thank you very much. Okay, we have 3 minutes, and if I can just stretch to 5 minutes, because I think it's really a critical question for Pakistan's higher education sector, which Nick pointed out, autonomy. We've had the establishment of the Higher Education Commission, which has created new opportunities, but also challenges, and one of which is the construction of hierarchy, central control, bureaucratization of the university. Many of the vice chancellors in Pakistani universities act as, godfathers. There's a big civil service type structure that has evolved around it, and that has affected what Nick, you described as autonomy. So I want to start with Faisal for a few reflections on how that space has evolved with regards to higher education, and then maybe bring in Nick to that discussion.
I think in some ways we're circling back to thinking again about these issues. I think when the 2000 report on higher education was done, and then HEC was created, and Baba Sahib was very part and parcel of that discussion and the creation of the HEC, the idea was to go for an agency that would be rather small but would facilitate and develop the higher education sector a lot more. What ended up happening over the last 20 years is it became very large, it became a bureaucracy in itself, and became very difficult for universities to have any relationship of autonomy, etc., while keeping that autonomy with the HEC. And so now that's why we are seeing that there's a lot of talk right now, if you take today's or yesterday's paper, that there's a new bill or act coming which will further cut down HEC's power, etc. And the issue is not that they are giving that power to the universities, it's going to the Ministry of Education rather than to the universities and so on. So that entire debate, I think, has become a lot more going back to the early period of rethinking what needs to happen. Because if you're going to do that and you're going to give it to the ministry, then that's going to evaporate any kind of autonomy completely. You can't have a Ministry of Education overseeing a very weak HEC, and that weak HEC trying to oversee 220 odd universities and so on. So that's one side of it. I think governance model at the university level and at the higher level, which is HEC, and also how VCs are appointed, how the governance of universities is done in the pub, it's completely broken down. It's very, very poor. I mean, one just indicator is look at how much litigation happens any time a VC is appointed. It's just ridiculous how contested and difficult that entire process has become. And that is a sign of a broken down governance system at that level. So that's one side. The financial side, I think, which is the second one which concerns autonomy directly, is even worse. I mean, there are universities, the older ones, bigger ones in the country that do not have even enough money to pay salaries. They've been sometimes postponing them, and they definitely don't have enough for pensions, etc. So there's a big reform needed in the financial model. The amount of yearly money that is going to public sector universities has been going down or has stagnated, even in what do you call it? Not in real terms, but even in nominal terms, it has stagnated, right? With 15-20% inflation, that means a cut of 15-20% every year almost. So the financial model is becoming very, very non-tenable. There needs to be a thought process that was just mentioned, the balance between fee and endowment, government money, even in the public sector. And just to end, because the private sector is also thriving, there are, again, variations in the private sector. There's for-profit and not-for-profit. So I'm not going to talk about for-profit. They seem to be making their own space for what they want to do. For the not-for-profits, I think the basic challenges are the same. A weak economy, very significant inflation, which is hurting our costs a lot, but a very, very high reliance on tuition fee. I mean, for LUMS, for example, it's around my guess is it's about 70% or more. And with that kind of reliance, to have a model that allows for both autonomy and for research to happen and so on, I think it's a very, very difficult proposition.
Right. Now, this is spot on. I think, Nick, the discussion that we were having yesterday about the business model of a university and the question of autonomy being linked is exactly what Faisal is highlighting. We'd like to further elaborate on that.
Yeah, I mean, within each institution, you have this very difficult decision, and it highlights the fundamental paradox at the heart of trying to run a university, echoed in the, what Stephen was describing about the differences between the investment model for an endowment fund for a university versus investment management for profit in the wider world. And the choice for universities is a little bit like the choice, you might be faced with an aircraft. Do you let the pilot fly it, because that will be safe and efficient, and you'll know you'll get there? or do you let the passengers fly it? Yeah. Now, I think we would all say that letting the passengers fly it is almost certainly going to result in a disaster. But actually, in a university, that's what we have to have the courage to do, because universities have a very different purpose to a business. Businesses need to be run efficiently and effectively, but universities need that autonomy. They need to be fit for the academic purpose. And it's very difficult to combine those two elements of actually governance and management efficiency with making sure that a university is fit for purpose.
Great. Well, this is a great analogy. I'm almost feeling like we need a special panel next time just on the governance of the higher education institutions, and very happy to collaborate with LUMS on that. Especially Oxford is a very decentralized place, and its governance itself has evolved over time.
Oxford is utterly baffling, even to those of us who've worked there for decades. It's run by essentially the CEOs of Oxford number in their hundreds.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Great. So perhaps I could give, I'm going to close off this session by providing 30 seconds to all of you, but 1 minute to Babar Saab. And with Babar Saab, I want to, perhaps so that he has a little bit of time to think on his feet about some vision. I know this is being recorded. It's something very close to our heart at the Oxford Pakistan program. What is his vision for education, higher education? And those words we would like to treasure, keep with us, and work on them. But other panelists, I'm going to give 30 seconds for any final reflection. Faisal, you're fine. Okay. Nick.
My vision, gosh, I think I could probably sum it up in a very small number of words, which is universities should nurture the open-ended quest for understanding our world, unconstrained by finances, political interference, or subject barriers.
Great. Stephen.
I would love to see that the transformative power of higher education, the transformative power academically, personally, and socially, the richness of the collegiate experience is available to all talented, motivated, committed students across the world. That's a bit ambitious, but that's what I'd like to see, and that's what I'd like to make a small difference in. So.
Malala.
I'd like to remind everyone that, especially the students here, that the Oxford Pakistan program was started by students. And they have all brought, these people to the stage. This is why this conversation is happening right now. So if you have ideas where you want to bring more inclusivity, where you want to work on access, where you want to actually change and challenge the system, like go for it. Work together, you can make it happen. You see it already happening here.
Babar Saab.
Hope and ambition is that universities and hopefully LUMS will produce the future leadership of the country, which will take it forward and will produce leaders who will look at Pakistan and not themselves. We try and give education to our young men and women so that they are open-minded, they are liberal, they are tolerant, they honor and respect merit, and that is what is really needed in the future leadership of the country. And hopefully, my vision for LUMS and for Pakistan is that we need leaders who can look to the country and not to themselves. Thank
you. This is an extremely powerful statement, and I think we can relate to it, because when these students approached me for the first time in the gardens of Lady Margaret Hall, one of the first things we discussed was that you have to be selfless, because there's always, in order to give, you have to, in order to receive, you have to first give. And it's only selfless individuals who could do that. And we've seen the transformative power of what we've done within a year and a half. Great words of wisdom. With the permission of the organizers, can we extend the session by 10 minutes? It's 11:40. We'll finish by 12:10. Would that be okay? Great. So we have 30 minutes, and we want to include as many of you as possible. So please keep your questions very targeted. One question each person, no speeches, quick points. Okay, so the first question that has come to me is from Dr. Nasir Jamal Khattak, who wants to speak on behalf of public sector universities. Dr. Nasir Jamal Khattak.
So thank you very much. It's good to be here, and good to see you, Malala, and Ziauddin Seb, and Torpeke, and everybody.
Your question, please, very quickly.
My question is, can we actually do what we say we can do for public sector universities, given the dynamics, political dynamics and economic dynamics of Pakistan? We love to have power, and we love to find people on whom we can exercise that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's a great question. Faisal, perhaps you could.
So when I look at education, I study education across from K to all the way, kindergarten to higher education. And I see many examples of countries where they went for, when they started mass education and started providing some notion of quality education, it wasn't that they were as rich as they are now. So whether that's the Meiji Revolution in the 1860s, or whether it's the transformation that starts with, say, the discussions of Horace Mann and the Common School in the US, and so on. So, and even within the region, so one, that this notion that we don't have this resources, that we don't have right now wherewithal to do it, I think that's not the case. It's an issue of priorities. The second thing is that even within the region, we find these examples, whether in Sri Lanka and other places where, and Bangladesh most recently, where this change of priorities led to significant changes at the ground level for a majority of the students and people. So to say that it can't be done, I don't think that's true. It can be done, but it requires the kind of change of priorities that was talked about in the vision statement that was given.
Great. All right. So we are going to combine collect a few questions. Professor Asghar Zaidi, the Vice Chancellor of Government College University.
Thank you so much.
Can somebody provide a mic? And next, I'm going to come to the lady
Very briefly, I'm an Oxford graduate, and I'm Vice Chancellor of two of the most prestigious universities, public sector universities in Pakistan. Government College University and the largest university in Pakistan, Punjab University. And I was a bit disappointed by the views taken by Bari Saab on the situation in public sector university. If I could repeat the word, completely broken down, very, very poor, non-tenable. I think you should come and visit us sometime to have a better view on public sector universities. We are doing excellent given the resources. This is not to say that there are not problems. We have serious problems, but despite that, Punjab University is graduating close to 30,000 graduates every year, and Punjab Government College University has the great achievement of having actually educated Syed Babar Ali. I'm coming to my question.
Yes, please.
My question is, we are slaved in many ways, and I'm exaggerating deliberately, by the HSC regulation. And I give you one example. Excess is one thing, and quality is even more important. Bari Saab has said it himself. And quality depends on curriculum. What are we teaching actually to the students? And next thing is, who is teaching that curriculum? And I'm grateful that Malala Yousafzai has actually funded scholarships for faculty training. This is the time to train the trainers so that they could go to those public sector universities where majority cannot go abroad, cannot afford to go abroad. So coming back to curriculum, HEC has a curriculum review committee which should meet, which by their definition should meet every 2 years. Last time they met, 2018. And even 2 years meeting in the current pace of development in the country, in the society, is much too long. So what we are basically held back is by a regulatory authority that is not doing its job.
Thank you.
And then the blame is passed on. So my question then, how could we do away with such regulatory bodies? How could we learn from good institutes like Oxford to actually have more control on curriculum development? Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Nick, I'll come to you later on to answer. But in the meanwhile, there's a lady here with a question. Okay.
So I'm a LUMS alumni, class of 1996. I'm an entering student into Harvard Graduate School of Education this fall, 2023. And so I really wanted to attend this. Very quick question, and Malala, you touched upon this, that there's a huge access system, like access problem for girls to get to schools. Not even girls, there's boys also. I mean, and for girls, definitely with harassment and, actually getting physically to the school, and then beyond that into high school and college and everything. Is there something being done by your fund for that as well? Because that would definitely improve numbers.
Thank you. Thank you. We got the question. There's a lady here in the front row. Can you please stand up so that they could know? Okay.
Thank you. Fatima Said, I'm also alumni and also on the Board of Trustees of LUMS. Thank you very much for your thoughts. My question is centered around when we talk about the future of education and how the models are emerging from a collaborative perspective in terms of the academia and the industry, given the disruption that is taking place and where you have virtual programs that are available. So it's more on the frameworks that are emerging.
Great question. Okay, I'm going to ask the panelists to respond, but I'm noticing that there are no questions on this side and there are no questions on that side, so I want to be equitable. But first, Nick, if you could respond to the question by Professor Asghar Zaidi, the sort of role of regulatory bodies, particularly in terms of curriculum.
I mean, that's a fundamental question that lies right at the heart of university autonomy, isn't it? And I think that you're right to focus on that because of this being a fundamental purpose of the university to have the autonomy to set its own curriculum. And I think universities cannot function effectively without that. So I applaud your efforts to try to encourage governments to have the courage to leave universities to regulate the curriculum themselves.
Yeah.
There has, for more than 250 years in Western Europe, been a debate over the useful versus the useless, with governments constantly berating universities for being self-indulgent and out of touch and needing to create curricula which answer to the government's own social purpose. And I think it's a tribute to the fact that actually many universities have resisted that higher education has made such great strides forward across the globe.
Could you also perhaps bring in the UK experience in curriculum? How do universities like Oxford and others, I mean, we are pretty independent, autonomous in terms of setting our curriculum.
So there are standards set by the government at the undergraduate level, but not at the graduate level. So we have descriptions of the key elements that our higher education regulators expect to see, and I believe that that is their attempts in order to ensure quality. I think most university academics feel that it doesn't play a valuable part in ensuring quality, and that it adds constraints rather than actually enabling the curriculum to fly. But Stephen may well also have views on this.
Yeah. I mean, in Oxford departments, we always have audits of every degree, and the external people coming in to do audits, and they would provide inputs into what the curriculum could look like. All right, for the second question, or maybe if you want to expand.
Perhaps I could just speak to the question about the future of education. It's such an important question. There's so many dimensions to it. I think one of the two quick points on that. One is about this, obviously, the plethora or expansion of online resources and the ability to teach through the pandemic. One thing both Harvard and Oxford really believe in and also have empirical evidence on is the power of physical interaction, the importance of serendipitous conversation, the importance of interaction with unexpected interaction, group dynamics, etc., and basically the importance of a residential education. Now, of course, there's going to be huge growth in resources available online, but I think as we bring diverse views and diverse minds together to really tackle problems, the in-person nature of education will remain paramount. The other question about industry collaboration, that's a very important and complex question because it goes to autonomy of the research and academic endeavor against the commercial imperative. And the commercial imperative is a very good thing too. I've worked in the commercial arena, but this trade-off and balance, and I think both Oxford and Harvard have done some interesting programs. Oxford has a partnership with Legal & General, a big insurance company in the UK, where there's a long-term funding arrangement that is beneficial to the Oxford Research Program and also beneficial to Legal & General. So they're very open to these partnerships, but where there is clear ownership of the academic endeavor. This is where the boundary, again, there's about regulation of curriculum, but there's also commercial influence on curriculum. And this is one of the very important things, to have those boundaries very clearly stated.
Malala.
Thank you so much for the question. So at Malala Fund, we work with local education activists who address some of the problems that I mentioned earlier, and that includes working on policy level changes to make education more accessible, to ensure that children have access to up to grade 12. And along with that, we also work on the quality of education as well, and making education accessible through other means, such as technology. So some of the organizations we support are actually using digital tools and tablets and other things to make education available to children who have missed some years of their schools, who have faced dropouts as well, or who have faced challenges like the COVID-19 that was completely unprecedented. So those tools have been really effective as well. And we also partner, we have public-private partnership as well, where we are working on STEAM education, and we are supporting this transformative education program in 1,300 government schools. So we work in different ways. And I think the last one is this scholarship program that we are supporting, or the teachers training program that we are supporting, that you mentioned. And it's really making sure that we are working from all sides. As much as you can do, you should do. You should not limit yourself. But the main focus is access to education for all children, then especially girls. And I would like to mention the scholarship program or the support program, especially the one that we are doing through OPP, because when girls would know that there are universities that offer them the financial support that they need to get into the university and then stay in the university and complete their course, that gives them the hope and aspiration to actually remain determined in their studies. It also gives some hope to their families as well, that they do not have to worry about the financials. So, for any child, any student, whether you are in a school or in a university, in an ideal case scenario, you should be fully focused on the learning opportunities. You should be engaging in conversations. You should be enjoying your time in the libraries, and you should be really focused on the career that you want to build, rather than worrying about getting financial support. So it's something that no student should have to worry about. So these are also some other ways in which we can help many girls to have the opportunity to get into the education.
Thank you very much. On technology, introducing many challenges and opportunities, but one great opportunity is to really break the barrier of access. And so the Oxford Pakistan program, for example, arranged an access conference for Pakistani students who wish to pursue graduate studies in the United Kingdom. And 300 students participated in it, and next year we are going to expand and do it together with British Council and LUMS as well. And there's a lot of useful information that people who've already been admitted in the University of Oxford could provide, but also the faculty members and other related people. That's an interesting frontier of technology. Okay, so I'm going to look on my right, and this first hand raised by a student here, probably a young gentleman here, yes, in black shirt.
Hello. Okay, so my name is Haris. I'm a 2021 alumnus. I have a question from Dr. Bari. So, as Dr. Talha from OPP also mentioned initially, that we don't see a lot of names from Pakistani descent in the top, in top categories of science and technology. So, is that something related to the access issue, or is it a quality issue, or is it something entirely beyond the realm of higher education institutions?
Thank you very much. There's a question here in the front row.
I'm Shahid from Allied Schools. Allied Schools is a 1,000 school across Pakistan with a 300,000 students body. And the emerging trend is a STEM, the science, technology, engineering, and management. And so far, the basic concepts are concerned in a school side. Once Babar Sahib said, education is an ocean, and school education is an ocean within ocean. So therefore, what endeavors, what struggles are being made over this STEM, because it's the most urgent trend is coming up across the world. STEM education.
The lady at the back in pink clothes, or yeah.
Thank you. I have one question. We are talking a lot about in terms of access, right? Access in terms of financial background, access in terms of gender, but we have forgotten the dialogue in terms of access in terms of neurodiversity. There are a lot of people, a lot of students out there in the world, in LUMS and just generally, where there are neurodivergent. For people out there in in this room to understand it better, myself, I'm someone who faces issues with ADHD, right? And they arise out of past traumas, those were out of our control. But at the end of the day, even when you are giving those scholarships, right, they are still being measured on the basis of some grades, which I know cannot be changed. But there are many people out there like me. I have a lot of potential and I have made a difference out there. But they can necessarily be not translated, in grades. Whenever we are talking about scholarships, what can you do? What can you, as people who can create a difference, in the admissions in such universities?
Thank you.
So what can you do? And Malala, it's an honor being here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Who would like to respond to some of these questions? Faisal, maybe you could start off.
So I'll start with the last one first, because right now I have a project on disability and education where I'm researching this area. And though it might be, this might be difficult for people to accept or believe, but essentially there's nothing going on in the area. I mean, it's hard enough to get funding for doing research in the area, far less to actually think about what kind of projects are needed to make education, far less higher education, accessible. So if you're hard of hearing in Pakistan, you can't do a degree program. There's only 1 or 2 universities that offer degrees for people who are hard of hearing. It's only, I think, the visually impaired people who have some programs, and they've done well. We have some CSS and examples. But for most other challenges that our children face, and it's not a small number, almost 15% of our children actually face one kind of challenge or another. There is almost no provision for them. Even getting to metric is very hard. So That's a huge challenge, and if people want to work on it, as Malala was outlining, that it's the voices of people that matter, those voices need to be raised and talked about. I'll just briefly mention STEM for a second before we... on the STEM issue, so the School of Science and Engineering, I think here is doing a lovely job in what Sabi, our colleague at SSC, keeps talking about, a revolution that he thinks is coming through the school, where a lot of master's and PhD programs are producing people of a quality that will go into the gap that was mentioned by Talha Saab also, that not many people in STEM from Pakistan are in universities, etc. This has already, I'm seeing, I mean, this is, Adeel, you said this was a contribution of LUMS. Today, for example, in this older schools, management, humanities and social sciences, a lot of our own faculty now is our students who graduated from here, went abroad, did their PhDs and came back. I think econ department is almost half or more than half of that, which are this. And this history, literature, philosophy, a number of those areas, and this is also happening now in the sciences. And the newest school, the School of Education, only 5 years old, I'll plug it in there. We are hoping that it will happen there also. But that's the hope, right? So that I think needs to happen a lot in STEM as well, both at the university level and with Sabi's effort. We are trying to create diploma and other programs for teacher training, which will happen take it out at the school level as well.
Great. Stephen?
Just speak, I love your question about broader diversity and neurodiversity, and I just wanted to mention a program that's dear to Malala's heart and to mine at LMH, which is the foundation year that was instigated at Lady Margaret Hall, has now been taken on by Oxford University and Cambridge University. But bluntly, it's about looking for people who have had the talent but maybe not have got the grades. They have the potential but have faced some sort of disadvantage or some sort of barrier or obstacle, often educational background, but it could also be diversity in different ways, coming from, we have a Syrian refugee, we have someone from inner city up north where there's no educational aspiration. And it's about actually investing in, but also taking risk on admission. Oxford has not been good about taking risks on admission. It's very easy to take the top student from Eton. They're probably going to do pretty well at Oxford. It's not actually very hard to do that. But what it's changed, and I'm really proud that LMH and my predecessors at LMH, supported a lot by Malala and others, have really made a difference about we want that talent, exactly what you're saying. People have the potential, and we don't want to admit just on grades. And so that's a great, I really appreciate the question. And to something else, I also appreciated something else you said, because Malala, it is an honor. So thank you.
And you'll be glad to hear that I think 2 years ago, the Rhodes Scholar from Pakistan, Khansa Maria, is visually impaired, and she's doing very well in Oxford. And she's doing her MPhil thesis on disability landscape and education in Pakistan. Right, anybody else who wants to come in? Otherwise, I'm going to ask this side of the room to ask some questions. Okay, so there's a gentleman here in glasses, black coat, okay. And please do keep raising your hand so that I know. Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes, please.
All right. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity. My name is Salman Javed, and I'm Chief Executive Officer. We manage about 100 home schools, which are primary level, so that's not the question here. My question is to Dr. Nick and Dr. Stephen. Well, you mentioned that the endowment is almost like a business concern where you make investments and you get the money and you fund education. I'd like to know that the teachers or the professors are also in your university, the major stakeholders. How do you get to select them? And I would really like to know them, because once a student gets in, I mean, with so much struggle, like really reeling into the university, and then it's caged for another 4 years. So how do you people measure the outcome of the investment that the philanthropy has made?
Great.
I'd like to know that.
Thank you. There's a lady back. Yes.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum. My name is Natasha Barlas. I'm actually a LUMS alumni 2015, currently a faculty, but I've also worked on the mentoring projects Babar Saab talked about. So it's truly an honor just hearing all of you speak today. My question was how important it is to involve the environment and especially families and parents in our efforts for access and incentivizing, especially young girls in Pakistan. And I'd love to hear if Malala Fund or you guys know of any work that has been done to especially incentivize parents for young boys, but especially girls to have access to education. Thank you.
Thank you. And a final question here at the back, the lady with black clothes in the second row.
Hello, my name is Faisal and I'm an undergrad student at LUMS. And I had a question. Basically, we do see when we talk about inclusion, we tend to ignore that there is a monopoly in quality higher education within the global north. So won't it make logistical sense and more sense in terms of resource efficiency that we invest in institutions within the global south, we make them more quality efficient, we make them able to compete with the global north institutions instead of pushing students from the global south to go to the global north and then come back? Won't it be more efficient if we have, for example, Malala has this program for teacher trainings. If that is scaled up to universities, something like that for professors or faculty members, won't that improve our overall global university quality instead of only focusing on global north universities?
All right. Our esteemed panelists, who would like to go first? Nick?
Well, it's three excellent questions. The final one, I think, is particularly pertinent in this context. So I'll have a go at that one, if I may, Adeel. And you raise a point which was made very strongly to me by the Vice-Chancellors of African universities at an Association of Commonwealth Universities meeting that I attended as Commonwealth Scholarship Commissioner, where one Vice-Chancellor said, "Stop poaching our talent." I think the vision that we would like to have of this is of what the Vice-Chancellor here at LUMS identified as being one of the fundamental levers of the LUMS project, which is cooperation. Yeah. And I think rather than, to repeat something which I said earlier, we're not here to poach your talent, but we're here to invite you to come and join at the global table our endeavour to solve the world's greatest problems. Now, it's extremely difficult to catapult a university in Pakistan to a situation where it's capable, it has the capacity to do that. There is a lot of capacity building that needs to be done. And I think there is a role for experienced Western universities in that capacity building exercise. But I think there is also risks associated with that. And I think the risks are highlighted by the question that we had earlier on STEM subjects. Because one of the challenges we often find with students traveling to advanced Western universities for training is that at the end of that training, it's very, very difficult for them to return to their home university because there's an enormous gap, technology gap, in their capacity to return and carry on doing the research that they have become skilled in their postgraduate institution. So one of the areas I think that we need to focus on is ensuring that we work together to fill that gap between the doctoral and the PI level, the senior academic level, that gap for the junior career academic. And I see so often across many of the universities that I visit in Africa and Southeast Asia that it's that gap where actually we lose so much talent.
Great. Steve?
Just to add, I think one was said that this program is about exchange, and we hope to open doors both ways. And as we have a lot to learn from each other, is our message. Just to the question about, I think, value for money and performance evaluation and vested interest, it's a very good question actually. In terms of, we talk about quality, we also I think actually teacher evaluation, and are students getting the appropriate competitive education from their professors? There's a very competitive competitive process to become an academic at Oxford. Obviously, we have hundreds of applications for a single post, so we hope we get good people. But there's a very important question about performance evaluation. In any business, you would evaluate the performance of your leaders and your senior managers and your employees, and evaluating teaching performance is quite tricky. And I think there's a lot for Oxford to learn. There's a lot of many universities to learn about how actually to professional development for their own academics. It's a very interesting point.
Great. Malala, any final reflection you want to have for?
Yes, I think there was a question raised about engaging parents and the community. The model that I mentioned, where we work in collaboration with other education activists, we do that through supporting them financially and giving them a platform to do their advocacy. In that model, there is a focus on addressing the social norms, and that means engaging parents, engaging community leaders, engaging religious leaders as well, in making sure that education is understood in the local context, and it is welcomed, it is accepted for the girls, it is considered beneficial for her, for the family, and also for the whole community. And I think that requires just ongoing conversations, regular conversations, to make sure that it is not seen as a foreign, external idea that is intervening in that community, that it is seen as something that is coming from within that community. And a lot of the projects that we do, there's another school that we support. It is led by the local community. The administration consists of teachers and professors from that area, and they decide how the school should be run, what activities should be done, and it really helps in making sure that the community understands. The community has taken it as their own project now. It doesn't appear as that somebody else is imposing it on them. So, addressing social norms is such a big and broad topic that it's sometimes hard to address, but that requires ongoing advocacy, conversations, and engagements. Finally, you said that I asked my last few words. I've been advocating passionately for the education of girls because my own story is connected to it, but also because around the world there are 130 million girls who do not have access to education. It is a loss to those girls individually. It is a loss for their families as well. When girls miss the opportunity of learning, it is also an economic loss for the countries and the whole world. When you look at research and data, it tells you that there are so many advantages when we educate our children, especially girls. If all girls receive 12 years of safe, quality, and free education, it could add up to $30 trillion to the world economy. It could reduce poverty. It could reduce the likelihood of wars and conflicts. It could improve economies. It could bring more safety, and it could improve health. It could make economies healthier, wealthier as well. So the advantages are there, and it is an opportunity that we should not miss. All of the projects that we are talking about right now, it's all connected. It's all serving that common purpose that we all have. We want to make sure that no child misses the opportunity to get their education and to excel in the field that they want to. So this is what all of us, this is what brings us all together. And that is the vision that all of us have, and that, that thanks to Syed Babar Ali he has changed the futures of so many people, and this is something that a lot of us are already doing, but we are more ambitious and we have even bigger dreams, so we want to expand it as well. And when you look at the number of girls out of school and even the number of children out of school, Pakistan is always like the second last. And my dream is to just flip that and see Pakistan at the top of the complete enrollment. So, yeah. So that is the dream.
Babar Saab, would you like to offer any?
I think I've said enough. Thank you.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Well, before I pass on to Faisal, I really want to thank on behalf of Oxford University, the Oxford Pakistan program, to all our esteemed guests here, particularly Malala, who traveled specially for this event, but also to many others at LUMS who were really trying to coordinate this, the Vice Chancellor's Office, Usman Wahid Saab, who's been behind the scenes connecting everyone, the Oxford Pakistan program team, and of course the School of Education. I would just emphasize that this is just the start of our conversation, and we'll continue to create new avenues for collaboration so that these conversations could flow and contribute to the debate. Faisal.
Thank you, Adeel. Could I request our Provost Tariq Chidun for his concluding remarks?
So on behalf of LUMS, I would like to really thank the Oxford Pakistan program and all the distinguished colleagues, Professor Bari, Professor Malik, Professor Brown, Professor Blyth, Malala, and Syed Babar Ali, to make this a wonderful discussion that we had this morning. We started off with Professor Arshad, who talked about access, about relevance, and about collaboration, hinged upon values. Then we heard from Tala about the need for STEM education. And then, of course, we heard about the different wonderful programs that Harvard, Oxford, LUMS, and the Malala Foundation have been doing to increase access, especially to girls. And then, of course, we heard about the challenges of a sustainable education, universities, models, as well as the endowment versus fees. And then to top it off, we heard about the autonomy, which is so precious for universities, and the articulation of how higher education can sort of transform lives. So I'd like to thank everyone once again, and on behalf of LUMS, this has been a wonderful occasion and a privilege this morning. Thank you very much.
Could I request Dr. Arshad Ahmed to the stage? This is just to give souvenirs to our panelists so that there is some memory of this program beyond today. So could I? Malala. Thank you very much. नहीं बाबा साहब मुझे नहीं पता हाँ